in there. Need to look at that. For the agribusiness stuff, grazing, cow calf operations, all those sorts of things, when it's 85% of land, you have to be, and I sincerely believe it's possible to use resources in a responsible manner. So the demagoguing of, you can't do anything is I think we rejected that in Nevada. Nevadans are environmentally conscious folks, but they also, I think, believe that it's possible to use the environment in a responsible way in many instances. So I think job one, and I was asked, what committee would you like to be on if you got back there? What's your number one pick? And mine was natural resources, because that's where the public lands jurisdiction lies. So when you talk about those opportunities for tourism, for recreation, for agribusiness, for minerals, for energy exploration, for all those sorts of things that feed into the towns, whether they're northeastern, whether it's here in western Nevada, or even southern Nevada, feeds into all those things. I think that's got to be something where you take a more aggressive land use view toward it, in terms of sitting back there and working with Department of Interior, Department of Agriculture, Forest Service, BLM, those sorts of folks. Speed up permitting processes. Don't ask anybody to look the other way or break the rules. It's like, it has to be more responsive and allow stuff to happen that's, that makes sense for business in Nevada. An example is right here in east of us in Lyon County. There's some folks permitting-wise, Nevada Copper Company, Pumpkin Hollow Project, one of the richest copper deposits, and it's not news, by the way. It's the recent thing. Copper and steel out southeast of Arrington, Mason Valley, and they're still messing around with slogging through the permitting process, not asking them to disregard anything, just going through the process and blah, blah, blah. Here we are in the middle of this deal. Lyon County is one of the hardest hit counties in Nevada, unemployment-wise. And so you talk about that, it's like, come on. I mean, as long as we're complying with legitimate regulations, whether environmental or administrative, we do it in a timely manner where these folks can get moving. So I think that's number one priority in terms of putting that vast resource that is 85% of our land mass in this state more in the play, if you will, for the private sector where it's appropriate, which I think is over a lot of it, for the private sector to get that private side economy blowing and going in terms of jobs, supplies, room nights, restaurant nights, and mining-driven companies, cattle ranching companies with their people going back and forth, energy exploration, mineral exploration, just the folks that are the recreationalists, whether they be bird hunters, quad folks, bird watchers, you name it. So a lot of that stuff I think needs to go into it. There are some energy issues out there that I think can be exploited on those lands appropriately. But I think you also have to take a look at how many jobs they actually create. I think you need to take a look at what kind of water they use, since that's a fairly precious resource in the Great Basin. And I think you also have to take a look at what you get that going. Is it something that requires continued subsidies in order to operate? I can understand why you might encourage some folks R&D to get up and running, but if they're running and you got to subsidize them, and it doesn't create many jobs, you have to subsidize them, and the tax dollars are being used to do something that the market doesn't support. So,
how's that different from the sagebrush?
You know what, I'll tell you the problem with the sagebrush rebellion was Dean Rhodes and all those guys wanted to own the land. And when you got a state that's on its hind end financially, you got to manage 85% of that now. That's a huge thing. I mean, heck, the federal government doesn't even do a great job. So I would, the areas around the urban areas may be one thing where you transfer ownership, doing the checkerboard stuff, but I don't think you want to quite go full blown, we want it all, because what are you going to do with it if you get it? Yeah.
Talk about the different energy sources. Obviously, the key to a lot of the energy sources, whether it's solar or geothermal, electric, or transmission lines, is the right thing. And we all know there was a really bad bill that the governor rightfully vetoed the other day. We were probably put together, but the rest on the federal level, and we may be able to build a coalition with other people in Congress to help with transmission lines and plus transmission lines.
One of the important outfits on the Republican side of the House is the Western Caucus. and that's folks Utah, Arizona, Nevada, Idaho. You know, it's basically the folks west of the Rockies, and it's an important. It's becoming a more important organization back there because of a lot of the present administrative policies, which are basically a war on the West. You've heard that phrase before, where some people think there's a flat-out administration war on the West right now. And so whether it's transmission lines, whether it's water policy, whether it's environmental policy, or whether it's air quality, all those sorts of things are things that one of my first plans, if I got back there, would be is to go figure out where first base is in that and how to get to second and how that all works, because in a policy sense it's a pretty important group. So it's not only transmission, but you know, the problem is when you pivot from the fastest growing state in the nation for probably 16 of the last 20 years to the one with the highest unemployment, highest foreclosure rate, all those things that you worried about just 5 years ago in terms of energy supply and that, you know, I mean, we still need to beef up that infrastructure, but now it's, you know, you're kind of multitasking in terms of how you do jobs, how you do land use, how you do those infrastructure type of things. So,
where do you stand on the Southern Nevada Water Authority? Would you please stand on it?
Well, actually, I'm the guy who did the bill in the legislature that provided for legislative oversight over in 2003 or 2005, which was not popular with them at the time, which is the story in and of itself, how that bill actually got passed. It got killed a couple times. And anyhow, we ended up getting it through. Now the Public Lands Committee has specific statutory oversight. You know, here's the interesting thing, though, about eastern Nevada and the water. If you look at a map, those ranches in Snake Valley and what's the other one next to it, Spring Valley. You know, Republicans kind of pride themselves on being property rights folks. Funny thing happened on the way to the Rumble. There's a whole bunch of people that own ranches over there that sold their ranches in Southern Nevada water. Willing buyer, willing seller. You look at a map of ownership now in those valleys, and the first time I saw it, it's like, oh, those are nice colors. And I wondered, well, there were like 6 different colors in these 2 valleys. Well, basically 5 of the 6 colors belong to Southern Nevada water. And so when you say, well, we don't want that water to move, it's like, well, we have a process in state law that talks about you have to go through the state engineer's office and satisfy a lot of Owens Valley type criteria before they can move it from one basin to another. But the other part of it is that Mo White owns a ranch in Snake Valley that has 1,000 acres and a couple thousand acre-feet of water rights. And Pat Morway shows up and offers you 3 times market, and you decide to sell it. It is America, and you can sell it. And guess what? There's been a fair amount of that going on. So there's a lot of us sitting there talking about, well, what about this, what about that? Meanwhile, back at the ranch. Yeah, and you know what? I was surprised when I first heard about it, too. There has been a lot of sales activity in those 2 valleys with willing buyer and willing seller selling ranch and water.
Is it right to offer them a higher price than the market just to get them to sell and to spend the taxpayers' money?
They're not spending taxpayers' money, it's rate money. But here's the other thing. If the state passed something to say, oh, you can't sell to them, there's a few lawyers floating around that know that phrase, inverse condemnation. And so it's like, well, if I'm going to restrict your right to sell your land, you're not going to pay me. And it's like, not the way the state is right now. But there's still the process, if they want to move the water rights out of those valleys into another area, you still have to go through the basin transfer process, which some of the criteria are, what will it do to the basin that it's leaving, economically, there's about 8 or 9 criteria, which we passed in 2001, 2003. So it provides a pretty strong administrative framework to say, if this is going to drive the valley up and ruin the culture of the community, those sorts of things, then there's reason for the state engineers to deny those things. Some of them are. I think they're still ranching in that. Well, you know the background is highest foreclosure rate, property values are down, ton of improved lots in Las Vegas that are not built on, ton of empty homes, ton of foreclosures still. So the demand, when at the height where they were hooking up 24,000 homes a year, those days are gone. So yeah, you've still got those issues, but the demand to get it down there quick is pretty much non-existent. So the good news is everybody gets to take a deep breath. see what's going on there. I'll give you an example. You might have heard of the Coyote Springs project north of Las Vegas, up in straddles the Clark County, Lincoln County line. A lot of water with that. Within the last year, they filed change applications in the state engineer's office to change the water from municipal, which is homes and offices and stuff, to energy. So well, you don't do that if you're planning on building houses anymore. So I think they're thinking of, I don't know whether it's solar or wind or something like that. But I mean, those folks, the reality of the housing market in Southern Nevada right now is nobody's going along on rooftops, and probably rightfully so. The other good news is that eases up the pressure on the water. And by the way, it's been an excellent year, snowpack-wise, in the upper basin of the Colorado River. So the bathtub ring on Lake Mead is getting smaller.
You get to choose your committees when you go back there. You get to choose the committees you'd like to be on.
You get input on it.
Thank you.
They ask you, you get a chance to advocate. I haven't really spent a lot of time on that lead, just because it's like, hey, before you get too deep into that, you got to get elected first. So I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse, but like I said, natural resources, because of the public lands element of that, would be a priority for me. And then probably another one that is transportation, just because in the congressional district, it's one of the largest amounts of centerline miles per resident in the lower 48. Surface transportation issues are pretty big thing. We got a lot of two-lane roads that are lifelines to different parts of the state, as well as the I-15, I-80 corridors and 5395, that sort of thing. So that's kind of the lifeblood for all of our communities. So that would be probably a high second.
What is your biggest challenge? What is your biggest challenge right now?
You know what? Heck, I don't know that any of them are little. It's get up all day, every day. You know that there's nothing else going on nationally right now, and so I don't know whether it's after the 4th of July or whether it's the beginning of August. But I can assure you that your TV and mailbox will start filling up with things that are calling me everything but in Nevada. I've already been accused of being reckless. I'm talking about the debt, who owns it. Don't feel reckless. And we'll continue. Those are pretty insidious issues. So with nothing else going on, if you will, it's a bellwether. You got 4 congressional seats up in 2012. Of the 10 Republican seats that are up in the U.S. Senate, 2 were identified as potentially vulnerable. One of them was here in Nevada because of the John Ensign stuff. So Shelley Berkeley and Dean Heller will be fully contested. Barack Obama wants Nevada again, 6 electoral votes in the coming election cycle. So you will be subjected to a whole heck of a lot of out-of-state political attention. This will be the warm-up, and then on September 14th, it's only 6 months until sign-ups for 2012, and the primaries in June. 11 months from now for the 2012 race, and then 2012. So, maybe the economic reality for the state will be a whole bunch of political stuff for the next 16 or 18 months.
I love it. I think this is very early. Has anyone contacted you about having a debate with your competitors?
There's been some talk about, we take the view of if anybody wants to debate, we'll be there. Went to the trunk things in Elko and Pahrump, which was kind of an interesting framework, but it was like, hey, if you're not willing to get out and get in the same room with your competition and let people take your measure, then it's probably not a good thing to be involved in the process. So we haven't said no to anyone. I know there's been some folks, Chuck Muth talked about doing a debate. John Ralston talked about doing one on his show.
Did you commit to that debate on John Ralston?
Hey, listen, with John, There are people and there are people. When I go on John Ralston's show, it's either a debate with him and me, or